Right then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Foxtrotting in the Foxhole, Season 10, Episode 14, number 302 overall. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan, coming to you from Eagle's Nest 2, Studio B, on a fabulous Friday, as we always do whenever we're recording on a Friday. TGIF in it and all that other good stuff. Fantastic. The shout outs to Rode, Zoom, Botenzik. Yeah, all the cool tools that we use. And if you ever want to sponsor us so we can get more cool gear, ftinfx@gmail.com, or just drop us a line. You can always come on Aftershocks as a guest and chat, or give me an idea for the scene, or SJ Gets Down, or you just want to leave a message with us and say, hey, leave feedback, good or bad, I suppose, 541-525-0896. All right, let's get cracking. Another interesting week, a series of them, which is always fun for this time of year after football has gone on hiatus. Anyways, let's get to a little open face, shall we? Let me do a little adjustment here. This will work a little bit better for everything. Okay, let's open face time. So, it kind of starts off very somber. We got a double whammy this week, right? Tom Hagen and Double J? Are you kidding me? Two very iconic figures. And when I say Tom Hagen, I'm talking about Robert Duvall, who passed away at 95. And of course, the head of the Rainbow Coalition, Double J, Jesse Jackson. The two iconic Americans crossing the Rainbow Bridge. You probably could do several podcasts on all of their achievements and the cool things they've done. Controversial things they probably may have been a part of, but hey. We're just giving some shout outs there. Our condolences go to the families. Yeah, right. Long in tooth or not, we still lost, two giants as far as American icons are concerned. All right. Boy, this whole thing with the Epstein files, we've been kind of staying away from it because we don't go down that road. But, how it's trickled into sports. And how everybody's running for cover. And I think I've mentioned this before about the guy Casey Wasserman. He's head of the LA 28 committee. He's also got the huge talent agency. Obviously with the last name, if you know anything about the entertainment industry in LA and the Wasserman family, what they've done over the years, it's just like, yeah, okay. So once again, the fact that he's got connections to that world, big surprise there. But I love that, Karen Bass has told him maybe we should step away. I mean, yeah, he sold the agency and he's doing everything in his part because I guess this is his baby. And he, kind of like Peter Uperoff, right? That's 42 years ago before the job he did in LA 84. I get the sense he wants to leave a legacy, but I'm just sitting there thinking like everybody else, hell, got Prince Andrew over there in bracelets and shit because of this stuff. Yeah. I would have to think at some point the pressure is going to come down on him because there was like people, bailing his agency and it was probably wise. But then again, it probably made a nice chunk of coin. So it's not like homie ever going to suffer. Curious to see how this plays out. We'll have a comment or two when we know more. Okay. We're almost in March, y'all. February 20th. So that means we're getting closer and closer to World Cup 2026. And right now, there is no shortage of drama as far as the upcoming World Cup, with Foxborough trying to act tough, saying if they don't get the funds they need to do adequate security, they are going to pull out of hosting any World Cup games. You know what we say about that? British Petroleum. But that's what happens in America, and I'm sure elsewhere. We just don't know about it as much. All the theatrics and all this fake, you know, John Wick kind of stuff that these people in positions of power try to do. Just and the economic impact. And then talks about we're a small municipality. I'm just like, stuff, bitch. It's the World Cup. Now you may not be able to control how the dollars come in, and you may not be able to get a little extra cake for yourself, and that's probably what this is truly about. But like, you're gonna be able to pull out of hosting World Cup games. Can't wait to see how this plays out. See if we can get into a game of chicken with this particular situation. And let's see, what did we got? Oh yeah, Cam Newton making all kinds of news. Yeah, that Cam Newton. Well, one, his show on BET got the axe. It's executive produced by LeBron. I think it may have lasted 6 episodes, which begs the question. I mean, I'm not sure how weird BET is, but I would have to think there's an audience for you. Or it could be you so much about the culture, but you can't stop saying misogynist things. Like you can't have platonic women friends. Any woman that you're around, you gotta stab. And that's what he said, stab. And I'm just like going, good grief. And you wonder why nobody wants you for a premium job. Why Philip Rivers can get a call, but you will never get a call. Now, as wacky as the NFL is, in terms of them trying to appeal to everyone, that's not the kind of stuff they want. It's bad enough, to each his own. You want to have, 8 kids with 4 different women? I'm not here to judge you on that. It speaks for itself. So, but just all the comments like that, and talking about women's value a woman's value goes down. The more kids she has. I'm like, I don't know. I've seen some pretty hot women that have had 8 or 9 kids and have their shit together. I don't know what planet he's on. But this is to the point. You're about the culture, and the culture apparently just did you. Can't make this shit up, right? But 6 episodes? For real? The other fun thing going on this week. Micah Parsons, Skip Bayless, and Uncle Shay Shay involved in a beef. It's interesting to watch, but as I've brought up here in recent weeks, where most of us who kind of follow these sports eco streams in the pod stream, obviously, the YouTube platforms, and then what you see in the streaming / broadcast networks and whatnot. And how much of this shit is for theatrics? There was some pretty spicy stuff that was being said as far as what Micah said about Skip, and then Skip going on Facebook and X and basically just saying, fuck you. I'll meet you anywhere and we can discuss, like I did with Draymond. And, had that cheesy bit at the end about, because I guess Micah said that at some point, somebody asked him on another podcast, where do you want to be in 5 years? And Micah said, maybe being, finishing culinary school. And Skip's like, wow, my brother, this is brother Rick Bayless, is a pretty famous chef. And if you didn't know that, yeah. I'm sure most of y'all who follow the sports kind of stuff know this. They're not really close either, but it's like, so Skip, are you just trying to build your brand? It's funny that because he also mentioned Uncle Shay Shay, so Uncle Shay Shay and Ocho Cinco, they had to have their 5 cents on it. And of course, the headline was, get your name out of my mouth. But then you're playing the bro code thing too, both of you. as far as clickbait or rage bait, trying to get more, trying to build your brand up even more and get more followers and more engagements. And so it's almost like when you see these beefs at this point, you really got to take it with a grain of salt. Okay, let's pick it up here. You got Rashee Rice. Yeah, that Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs, the troubled one. You know, talent, but we really haven't seen. Well, you know, they talk about, you know, somebody like, what's their ceiling? I'm waiting for him to like climb up from the basement into the main room before we can even talk ceiling. But this thing with his woman suing him for $1 million, you know, the whole DV thing, we've brought this up in the past, and we've been talking more and more about these clowns that are involved in DV. I spoke about it last week, you know, at some length. The Commissioner Goodell needs to grow a sack and really start coming down on these guys. $1 million lawsuit. Yeah, I would like to think she ain't lying, but boy, if she's manipulating this for a payday, then I agree with Smitty of the Smitty and JB show. Said, hey man, you got to come at her with, you know, both barrels. If you know this is just a money grab. Somebody tells me this isn't. Somebody tells me Rashee might be that dude. Okay, MLS kicks off another wonderful season tomorrow. Big seasons. I've spoken about on all the platforms. And you know it is MLS season when our friends up to the north, or I should say in my case, our foes up to the north, as far as the Portland Timbers Football Club. Their kit sponsor this year is Bank of America. And leave it to the interesting ones in the Timbers Army to be up in arms. You know, battle against the culture. They're killing the culture, and they haven't been supporters of climate change. So they are demanding that the Timbers remove Bank America from their kit. I gotta wonder, is Merritt Paulson, owner of the Timbers, is he going to cave and do this? Stay tuned. Big to do about Jaylen Brown, the Celtics, his All-Star game, you know, because the All-Star game was obviously in Los Angeles, had a big party, and Beverly Hills Police Department said, "Oh no, you didn't." So yeah, there's a lot of controversy going on as far as Beverly Hills Police Department acting, I don't know, out of line. They seem to be sheepish about how it was handled. You know, people are talking lawsuits. I don't think so. I just think he'll be able to throw a bigger party. And that's why this is open face, man. We just get to cover, you know, whatever. I think I'll save that one for Aftershocks, next one. Wow. Stephen A. Smith, more conversation about him and a potential presidential bid in 2028. But given the events of the past couple of weeks, nah, man. You think you're that hard, but come on, man. But then again, like I said, it's been a zany week when it comes to folks on the political stage. You know, the Olympics raging. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, oh my God, a Sarah Spain sighting. Yeah, that Sarah Spain. Remember her? You know, one of the extreme wokesters back when Around the Horn was a thing in the afternoons. You know, I hate to say it, but I do miss Around the Horn. You know, when it's all said and done. She claimed she felt ill at the Olympics because she was sitting near Vice President of the United States, Mr. J.D. Vance. And I thought to myself, okay, you know, you are a wokester, or as they say, a WB. Fine with that. You know, everybody's got entitled to their opinions and their beliefs. You know, we're not about hating on you for being woke. But I'm always thinking, instead of you up here trying to, take a jab politically and just staying in your lane where you should have been ever since we haven't heard from you in a while. You should be like feeling a little more remorseful for you and your wokeness and some of your buddies as being the reason that Around the Horn got chased from the frigging airwaves. You know. Wow. I'll leave you with this one. But a parting shot before we get to the 43K view. I think it's kind of interesting. There are certain folks that are trying to push back on the Rap Hall of Fame. Basically, like saying that, all the folks that are associated with rap that are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they want to know, when are the Rap Hall of Fame going to put cats like Aerosmith and all the folks that drop the good samples as far as some of the great hits in that genre? I said, as silly as that sounds, I'd actually be there to watch that argument go down. All right, folks, we're cold chilling like a funky cool Medina on a Friday. We'll be back momentarily. Aye. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Chilling on a fabulous Friday. It is Friday. Rush hour, but who cares? Since we didn't take the homies and homettes out last week for a flight on the Gulf Stream, we're going to get a lift and gather them up, get some tasty adult beverages, get our way to the Eugene Airport. We're just going to boogie on down through TSA, smiling with our real ID, till we get to the tarmac, where our shimmering Gulfstream G650 awaits an early evening flight to get to our cruising altitude of 43,000 feet, where we take a look at the campuses of America, as we call this segment, the High View above campus. Well, damn. There's a lot going on this week. I kind of love it. Obviously basketball. I talked about this on Aftershocks. How everybody's trying to hype it up. Men's basketball and women's to a certain extent. Trying to hype it up, make it bigger than it actually is right now. But there are some good stories, and we'll get to there in a second. Because I think I mentioned this on Aftershocks as well, number 31 and penultimate. We're going to wrap up season 1 there, so y'all want to be on this, hit me up. We need some guests. But the guy from Kansas State, Mr. Tang, yeah, getting fired for just cause. We spoke about that. Obviously, after having a few minutes to marinate on it, firing him for just cause, we're telling it like it is. I was talking about this last night with Brenda the Show Next Door and Eagles Nest 1, the MDG. And it's ridiculous. And when this thing goes to court, I think Homeboy's going to win. If I'm a betting man, I don't think it sees the court. I think it gets settled beforehand. He ends up getting paid, and they just tell him to get the F away, even though they don't want to pay them. As I've been saying a lot lately, colleges have got to do what they need to do. I don't think they should be shady, but they gonna be who they gonna be. And if you don't win, well, damn, I tried. After all, it is college, so you might as well give it the old college try, right? I think it's interesting though that there's a couple of cases that have people in the crosshairs, and the NCAA is threatening to vacate wins and titles for schools they're trying to skirt this rule by pushing some of these guys that probably shouldn't be eligible, but because there's no way, there's nothing binding right now to prevent them from flouting the rules. But I think whatever they have going on in the back room, as I said on Aftershocks, they got to fight this tooth and nail to the Supreme Court, do whatever they need to get this imposed where we go back to having a 5-year limit. 18 to 23, close all the avenues for loopholes and being able to circumvent the rules. Since I've said about, the transgender war, there are solutions. They aren't the prettiest, and not everybody's going to be happy. But in order for us to get sanity and move on, adults have to make those decisions. And just like when we were kids, when the adults made a decision, you followed it. You didn't always like it, but you got pissy and you moved the F on. Okay. This whole thing with Darren Peterson of Kansas, really troubling. Because we're at that point in the year now where we actually know who the stars of college basketball is. And I mean, this guy's been on my radar because everybody's been talking about him. He's quite the player. Problem is this whole load management thing that he's being accused of. I mean, there's so much to unpack with this one. The idea that these mofos are getting paid. The guy of his skill set, he's probably getting a pretty good chunk of change to play for the Jayhawks. And, I was watching his coach, legendary Bill Self, just looking so beleaguered for us. Well, I thought he was going to come back in. This is the game that they won. And what did he have? Before he left for Cramps, he probably had 18, 19 points in, 19 minutes or something like that. So he's probably going to be 1, 2 in the draft. Although this idea that you're already load managing, that might scare some people away. I doubt it, given his skill set. But you'd have to wonder, are you load managing or are you Greg Oden, Sam Bowie Part 3? Hard to say. But this will be one of the more interesting stories as we move into March and we start getting into, the real time with basketball. Speaking of, right, how about, I said it wrong the other day, too. I can't think of it. It said Idaho when I meant to say Iowa State. Yeah, they've been on a roll. Zona was one. They took some losses. That was kind of interesting. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't point out one of the losses that needs mentioning. Nebraska had a great season. I mentioned many times how it warmed my heart when their kids told their fans not to storm the court. We should beat these teams. Well, when they lost to Iowa, and Iowa stormed the court, and there were some ugly scenes down there. It didn't get ugly, but I think, as I've been saying since 2020, we're inching closer and closer to an ugly incident that's once and for all going to stop this madness. When you start talking about the emotions, especially as insane as people are about their sports in general, but especially college sports, even college basketball, more so in college basketball, I think, because of the proximity to the players and all that nonsense. So yeah, we're going to see a very ugly incident here soon. It's just a matter of time. I'm not trying to will it into existence or anything. It's just inevitable, given everything that's at play. Okay. So as far as the rankings go, Michigan's 1 over on the ladies' side. UConn doing UConn kind of things. Nothing ever shocking as far as that goes. A lot going on with the South Carolina and LSU. I mentioned that on Aftershocks 31. Check it out on YouTube. like and subscribe to FTI and FX Media's YouTube channel. We could use all the subscribers and the love we can get. Help a brother out. But I talked about this game and not moving the needle. And it just quietly has been percolating in the aftermath since I did my aftershocks on Tuesday. Did you see this rant that Flo J. Johnson, who I've said seems like she's been at LSU since the Obama era? Wow. Remember, I was like referencing The Wire. You know, right? You remember Wee-Bay's kid, his Wee-Bay's wife, Shalonda. This was like right up that alley. Flo J ain't losing her life. She didn't lose. LSU may have lost, but she didn't lose because she's winning at life. Because she's going to go to the WNBA and get that big bag. Yeah, I'm just going to try to be nice and not go the route of simple like Coach JB or Smitty and those guys would. But I'm just like, wow. Marcus Wiley has some fun with it. And you wonder why people think, as the culture, we're just so cooked. When you see this rant, go look for it on YouTube. Flo J. Johnson. There's quite a few people talking about it. And, remember her brother a few years ago jumping over the scorer's table trying to fight someone. That's a feisty bunch, that crew, man. Yeah. Okay. I mentioned the whole Sac State, North Dakota State. Another thing that's really been added to that, Thomas Hammock leaving NIU, Northern Illinois, to go to Seattle to be their running backs coordinator, basically taking an administrative job, as opposed to coaching his team as they go on a new venture with the Mountain West Conference. And this all goes to, I agree with what the folks in the Podsphere are saying and on the various web shows. Nobody wants to deal with the asylum, right? It ain't a plantation anymore. It's an asylum. Giving these kids money, letting them play till eternity. And basically, if you treat them the wrong way, well, shit, I'm bouncing. Yeah, the level of anarchy, and we saw this coming. Maybe not the way it's quite played out, but we all knew we were going to end up in situations like this, and it's pure nuttiness. Mick Cronin sending a player to the showers early, right? Basically, what was a flagrant foul? I didn't think it was that bad, but whatever. And it was a frustrating game. I guess he's probably had some issues with the player, but basically kicking your own player out of the game. You didn't have that on your 2026 scorecard. Then him getting really salty with the press, which is just, you coaches, you Hurley, all you other guys, once again, tough guy act. Right? That you're so exalted that nobody can ask you a freaking question. Yeah, absolutely freaking ridiculous. Doug Gottlieb melting down. Should have stayed at ESPN, bro. Coaching isn't your strongest suite. School playing the victim, but the conference basically saying, man, you need to cool your heels for a game. No problem with that. Got Kristen Fury. I talked about this, I think, on Aftershocks. The whole thing, him attacking the Coach Prime and the Prime sexuals losing their mind. And the anti-Deion Brigade. So, yeah. It is kind of funny watching Matt McChesney, though, the former Buffalo, who always is making the rounds in the Podsphere and on the web shows. I never can tell whether he's not happy with what's going on, or maybe he still wants to have some level of access with the program. Even though I guess he tried to be part of it, but Deion was like, "Nah, man, we're going with our own people." Okay, let's wind this down with some fun stuff. How about Baylor's Tice Armstrong? This was like last Friday. 3 Grand Slams in one game. Who the hell hits 3 Grand Slams in one game? I mean, one's pretty much feeling like you got lucky with the girl you had a crush on for many years. But 3, you're having some ditty parties, man. Come on. Give it up for this cat. Wow. You see that popcorn machine that caught on fire at the Oklahoma-Georgia game at Lloyd Noble and Norman? Never thought I would see anything like that. But then again, when all the smoke happened when the NBA was playing down in Mexico a couple of years ago, and they had to cancel that game. So I guess you watch these games long enough, you'll see a lot of things. Okay, folks, it's time to get the plane back on the ground, hustle back to the nest, and bring you something you should probably know when we return on the other side. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here, ice cold chilling on a fabulous Friday evening. Had a dry day here in the Willamette Valley, which is always smiles. Should have went out and flown the drone for a minute or two, but didn't get a chance to do that. Boo-hoo-hoo. All right then, folks, let's keep it rolling. It's time for one of our favorite segments of the Foxtrotting and a Foxhole podcast. Something you should probably know, or things that happened this past week in the world of sports you might want to know or even care about. Wow. Talked a lot about Tyler Reddick, Michael Jordan, all the shenanigans at Daytona on Aftershocks. You know, he's gonna try to give Aftershocks some love. Guys having a lot of fun doing that. I mentioned at the time, you know, the Oliver Stones of the world talking about conspiracies. And that talk's out there, but I think the more compelling story is now how people think that Jordan is going to be the face of NASCAR, and that is going to allow NASCAR to regain popularity because folks are still mesmerized with the aura of a one Michael Jeffrey Jordan. They sure do try, don't they? I mean, I'm not gonna lie. We know they're Jordanites or Jordan sexuals, you know, whatever you want to call them. That, you know, hang on, you know, every breath the guy takes if he does something. Like everybody who got sucked into the whole thing he did for NBC, which, you know, I mean, if it's true, he made that kind of money for saying nothing. Basically, it's like, oh yeah, I'm done for the year for this. But it was cool as far as, you know, race week goes. He was pretty accessible to the media. You know, I talked about the little silly story with Reddick's kid, but then I knew that wasn't going to be a thing. So I didn't pay attention to it then. Not going to say much about it now. But yeah, I like that he was accessible. But this idea that he's going to become the face of NASCAR. Okay, yeah. Anyways, I love the Oliver Stones talking about it being rigged. Still can't get over that part of it. And, but I think NASCAR got a good boost. And, you know, folks are always talking about the wrecks and all this kind of stuff. What, man, you all watch super speedway races. You know anything can happen. Okay, let's move away from the track. Cool to see the Indy is almost about to start up. I am going to make it a point to get with the corner man. It's like high on my list. Maybe I'll check in with him after I finish this podcast. That's how bad we need to talk some motorsports. Over on the links, obviously, Pebble Beach, the legendary Italian Thai. How about my man Colin Morikawa ending a big drought? I mean, Scotty, give Scotty being Scotty. What did he have, like a 63? This is a 63 with 3 bogeys. Say what you will, and I know I've had my skepticisms or called him the Jimmy Johnson of golf, but man, that guy is doing some tiger-esque things. Make no mistake about it. Speaking of Letigra, yeah, that Letigra, Eldrick Tiger Woods. He met with the press this week, and they asked him directly, will you play this year? And he's talked about how hard it is, with all the surgeries. But he said everything's on the table. They asked him about Augusta, and he said it's a possibility. I don't know how serious he is, and could he even finish 72 holes? One thing we do know. If he can compete at Augusta, America will be happy, and the eyeballs will be there. The Masters does its thing itself, but having the Tigre there, that would be even better. So, wow. A lot of commentary about this next one. Ronda Rousey. Yeah. That Ronda Rousey. Forget about her terrible role in Entourage when she was Turtle's girlfriend. No, we're talking about when she used to be a legend. And she's getting back in the ring. This is part of Jake Paul's series. So I don't know if this is even for real. Fighting some other MMA stalwart who hasn't been in the octagon in a long time either. Because there's a lot of folks out there saying, well, shit, because you're getting the bag. Why don't you quit dicking my ass and let's go for it? So I'm guessing this is just going to be kind of a charade like so many things, as we're going to segue into a couple of things here in a minute. But let's just, with Ronda Rousey, I don't know what to think. I will, and with Jake Paul, you got to say this. The guy is, quite the showman, entrepreneur, all that good stuff, and knows a good opportunity when he sees it. I mean, after all, I'm sure Ronda was getting bored, when she leave to go make babies and all this other kind of stuff. And I know the whole wrestling thing, but we'll keep an eye out for that. Gee whiz. Okay, now let's segue into the weird. We've been talking, this is like within a week of each other in April. The whole Money Tyson thing, and the Korean co-sell Steve Kim brought up a good thing on one of the platforms he's on. I mean, isn't there like an 80-pound weight difference between these two guys? So, okay. But yeah. And then Manny Pacquiao was fighting in that same week. 47-year-old Manny Pacquiao. I sent a text to a friend of the show, Cooley Walker, my fight consultant. And he just said, a lot of these matches, you feel so dirty you need to take 2 showers after them, as far as actually wanting to consume it and be even a part of the experience. And I said, that's why I scarcely will tune in. And I'm usually oblivious and have to talk about it afterwards. But yeah, think about that. That's the best you've got boxing, Money and Tyson and Pacquiao. Speaking of Tyson, boy, I found this one really tantalizing. Now, it comes from Vegas bookmaker Art Manteris. Yeah. So, take it for what you will. I guess he claims in a book that's coming out that the reason Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas, remember Buster Douglas was like a 42-1 underdog in that fateful night in Tokyo in 1990 when Tyson's world came crashing down and it was never the same. He says that, we talk about the chaos within his camp, but the real culprit was low energy from an STD that he had contracted. Boy. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not possible, but wow. That was like 36 years ago. It's like, oh, this is surfacing now. Okay. Boy, I sure would like to get some more verification on that one. All right. Before we wind this thing down, let's see here. Let's talk some Winter Olympics. Okay. You know, let's get to a little bit, not in depth, but more of America the Weird when we get to a closer look. But I can say this Olympics has been interesting for me. Because it kind of started off to me pretty lackluster, but I am really impressed with the momentum this Olympiad has gained throughout. You know, and it does kind of feel like when we were kids as far as, people tuning in. I was over at the Friendly Garden this afternoon and people were watching the curling. Obviously, the success of the women's hockey team just obliterating people. Then, when it was money time, they brought their wallets and got a hard fought win and a gold. Props to them, got to give them, all kinds of love, right? Not the sad. Not the sad trumpet, Ken. Give the ladies some love, man. Yeah. Seriously. Men holding their end up the bargain thus far. Canada hanging in there as well. Hard fought win to stay alive as far as the men are concerned. Lots of disappointments. But yeah. I don't know. There's, the U.S. making a late flurry as far as the medal count goes, but Norway doing Nordic things ahead of the table. I'm sure after it's all said and done, I'll have some more thoughts. But that's my take on the Olympics for right now. Another thing I thought was interesting, all the tennis bigs are in Doha, Qatar. And there was this, I guess I saw this picture. I thought it was AI at first, but it turned out, the big four, Sinner, Alcaraz, Medvedev, or however you pronounce that, and the other cat, which I can't think of his name. I was just like thinking, would you see Jimmy Connors and McEnroe on a fishing trip back in the day? As we like to say, interesting times we're living in always. Not necessarily bad as far as that goes. All right, folks, when we return, we will talk some hardwood, the association. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Ice cold chilling here, Eagles Nest 2 Studio B. Watching a tussle with the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. Timberwolves taking care of business after the Mavericks made a gallant run and cut into this big lead that the Timberwolves had, down to 3, but I think it's back up to double digits. Awaiting the Lakers and the Clippers in the latest installment of the Battle of LA. A little bit later on the ESPN family of networks. All right, let's talk some hardwood then. Well, we have to start off with another somber one. Tough week, right? With Double J and Robert Duvall. I know, Tom Hagen, man. Jeez. And all the other great roles. Jeez. Endless. But Doug Moe. I know if you are, part of the basketball didn't start, until Kobe came into the league crowd, which nothing wrong with that. But yeah, once upon a time, the Magic era, even before that, well, kind of during it, Doug Moe coached the Nuggets, and in the 70s into the 80s, teams were not really. They were good, but you had teams like the Lakers. Before that, the Sonics and the Blazers. So the Nuggets weren't able to break through. A fiery character, well loved and respected. Anyways, our condolences go out to his family. Nuggets fans from that era that definitely remember what an influential figure he was as far as the NBA story is concerned, especially if you're talking late 70s, ABA. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what to say when it comes to data. Because I talked a lot about the All-Star game on Aftershocks 31, so I don't want to rehash that. But I do want to say, Silver talking about the numbers being up, thanks to streaming platforms appealing to more younger viewers. That right now, the data says the NBA viewership is up 16%, and these are the highest numbers the league has drawn since 2018. But if that's true, why is everybody talking about what a sick patient the NBA is? It's the load management and the tanking thing. There was a lot said about that today. Still need a little time to unpack it, but I will say, okay, you're trying to take an aggressive approach to finally dealing with this, coming up with some measures, not letting teams go back to back. Definitely sort of leveling out the lottery. Taking away the incentives to allow teams to tank. And they're still going to do it because the opportunity to get a Wemby, as many people have said throughout the week, and the Spurs, they're experts at this sort of thing. I get it. You have to do something. I mean, clearly you can't do anything about load management, so you might as well go with the lower hanging fruit of tanking, something you can apply more than window dressing to, but not really fix. Whereas load management, I don't know what the hell you're going to do about that. It was kind of interesting. I know the All-Star weekend, we talked about that. Still can't get over Dame Dalahala winning the three-point contest. Basically, walking up there, basically getting out of the wheelchair. Yeah. Another thing that on Commissioner Silver's plate, as I said the other day, don't be patting yourself on the back too hard. And that's clearly, his whole thing coming out about tanking. Was that yesterday or was that today? It doesn't matter. It's happening. That's the takeaway. Man. How about Barry at the All-Star game? Yeah, that Barry. Barack. Not Barry Bonds, but Barack Obama. And giving some, considerable time to talk about the NBA. How a basketball fan he is, and he's always going to be knowledgeable, talking about his Bulls and having a good time with Reggie Miller, and obviously making a plug for everybody to go to the Obama Center that's going to be opening up in Chicago sometime this year. But that was cool. Anytime you can get a former prez to come on and chat for a little bit, I'm always down with that. Because I heard something. Anyways, I mentioned the other day about Kawhi's moment. Looking forward to seeing what his bounce back will be tonight for the Lakers. I think this is a big game for both teams as far as what the second half of the season is going to look like for them. LeBron still being uncommitted about his future. Rich Paul making waves again, saying Ant-Man's the best player in the league. And, okay, there's an argument for that. SGA, Joker, Luka perhaps. He's within his lane to say that. I think it's interesting that LeBron not really committed. Why should he be? I mean, I know people like myself, many people, if you're not a bronzesexual, you probably want him to gracefully exit the stage now, but clearly, what's he going to do if he ain't playing ball? Especially when he can still do it. So, no sweats there as far as that goes. As far as his current team, boy, getting salty over there. I mean, they're making some moves. They hired Dodger executive. This is the Lakers. They're owned by Mark Walter, owner of the Dodgers. Lou Rosen's coming over. And it begs the question, how long is it going to be before Mark Walter runs Rob Pelinka out of town. I wish he would run Jeannie out of town. You know I love me some Jeannie, and I always will have a crush on my girl Jeannie Buss. You know I always pick on Jay Moore because it's just like, nah, what are you doing with him? But I've always liked Jeannie. Not in that way, like, oh my God, lusting after her. But yeah, I used to always be down with Jeannie, and I'm not anymore. I think her brothers, like many folks, have, made our love with the Lakers a little lukewarm. And, I'd like to see not only Jeannie go, but definitely Rob Pelinka. And I do think that Mark Walter, who's just quietly constructing the team the way he wants it to run, hopefully that is part of the process. I just feel the longer you keep these folks around, right, the longer it's going to take for the Lakers to truly become an elite organization like the Dodgers are, or like the Lakers once were. Because they're not really elite right now. They're just a brand that's got lots of banners, but the actual product, it's kind of meh. And I'm a Lakers fan, and I'm telling you, it's kind of meh. All right. So the NBA resumed last night. There were some big games, to give us a peek into the second half. The Pistons slammed the Knicks. This is like the third time that the Pistons have beat the Knicks by more than 30, I believe. 25 at least. I mean, just taking the belt to the ass whenever they play. Telling you, man, these Pistons, I don't know how far they can go. A lot of people have them in the finals. But hey, as I've been saying, if Tatum's going to come back to Boston, all bets are off. If he can get back on the court and make a contribution. But hey, I'm impressed. Hey, give it up for Dallas. They won't go away. They've kind of made it, a 5-point game again, and they're at the line? Cool. So what else happened last night? I'm sitting here looking here, straining my eyes here. Spurs slapping the Suns. Booker went down with some, problem in his thigh, I believe. Celtics bury the Warriors, but Warriors, like I said, a dying patient, on their way to the crematorium. Mm-hmm. The Clippers, obviously I mentioned them. They played the Nuggets, got a big 1-point win last night. We'll see how much they have in the tank for the Lakers momentarily. Sacramento, I know they've lost like 15 in a row or something crazy like that. Just god awful. I mean, talk about tanking. Half the team seems like they're going under the knife. Not sure what to make about this whole thing with LaMelo Ball. That's why he should be getting some TMCA time. And he probably will next week once I've had time to unpack this thing with the accident and him hopping out of his Hummer and getting into a Lambo and not really answering anything. Terrible optic there. What else do we got here? Nothing happening with the Queens in the court. And you have to wonder about Brianna Stewart, going over to Europe to play in the Euro 6. It's probably a bad sign as far as the WNBA season starting on time. Just saying, things ain't looking good as far as that goes. All right, folks. We're still cold chilling like a funky cold Medina. Timberwolves holding on to a narrow 2-point lead. And they've got the ball. About 7 minutes left. I'll update you at the end of this podcast, but you'll already know when it comes out. All right, we'll see you on the other side. All right then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Episode 10. Well, season 10, episode 14, 302 overall for those of you keeping score at home. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll see, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you'll see the address posted periodically through the nice little static images that we provide for the YouTube version. YouTube or Spotify or wherever platform that we are reaching you at. Always tell your friends if you want to be part of the Foxhole experience and come on and talk some sports or who the hell knows what we might come up with. Please do. It's fun. Love engaging with folks. Might do a live stream this weekend for the Aftershocks season finale. I'm weighing my options. MLS is opening up tomorrow and whatnot. I'm really excited about that. It's always a fun week on and really tumultuous off the pitch. I got to make a correction from Aftershocks 30 the other day. When there was so much going on. It's like I said, it was the end of the PSG match, which when Paramount flipped over to Real Madrid and Benfica, the whole thing with Vinny Jr. I didn't really get at the time I made the episode. It was pretty much right after that or during it. The whole thing with Prestiani and Vinny. And the wordsmithing that's going around about what he did or didn't do. So it's not so much the fans, even though what I said about the fans still stands true the other day. That, if you catch these folks, we got Max Bretos, the legendary Max Bretos of Apple and LAFC, voice of LAFC, echoed exactly what I said in terms of what has to be done. And I think with these players, in this case, and like I said, they're trying to wordsmith what may have been said or not been said. But I think, we've reached the point with the World Cup coming up where you have to adopt the zero tolerance policy as far as that goes. Because this is just a sordid mess otherwise, and it's an ugly, ugly stain on the beautiful game life. Okay. Man, so we had some UCL playoffs, leg one. Boy, what is up with this team from Norway that plays basically in the Arctic Circle? Bodo Glimt, I believe is how it's pronounced. They continue their demolition of Europe. They've already taken out City and Atletico Madrid. This time, they knock off Inter Milan 3-1. Wow. PSG had a hard-fought win at Monaco. They were down 2 goals to begin with. Then Vitinha missed a penalty kick, but they righted the ship to come away with a victory. Real Madrid did beat Benfica. Another interesting scoreline from this week's Champions League matches. How about Galatasaray beating the brakes off of Juventus 5-2? Man, the old lady has really fallen as far as Juventus is concerned. Newcastle and Borussia Dortmund roll. And, gee whiz. Somebody else had played to a draw. It was of significance. But I'm drawing a blank. Over on this side of the world, our version of Champions League, Concacaf Champions Cup, some interesting scores as a lot of the MLS teams traveled to South America, well, not South America, but Central America. LAFC putting on a dazzling display before they play Messi tomorrow at the Coliseum, which is going to be crazy. But they put up a 6th spot with Bowenga and Sonny doing that voodoo that they do. Nashville City and FC Cincinnati win big, but Vancouver plays to a 0-0 draw. Where are they? Were they in were they in Panama? No. The Galaxy was in Panama. They played to a 1-1 draw. I'm trying to remember where Vancouver was. I can never remember the name of these teams that play in the Central American countries. Just don't see them enough to actually remember who they are. It's a flaw I can live with. Let's see, what else do we have here? Well, we had Arsenal stumbling with a draw at Wolverhampton. Seemed like they had that result in check. Their lead's only 5. A lot of people are sensing a collapse, perhaps. Yet the door is kind of very ajar for Manchester City and Pep to swoop in and give their fans misery and the soccer peanut galleries all the fuel they'll possibly need for a while. It is kind of interesting to see not only Nottingham Forest, but also the Spurs way too close to the relegation line at this time of the year. In the end, I don't think either one will get relegated, but it sure is causing some anxiety among their supporters. Speaking of PSG, I thought it was kind of interesting because they lost last week. I think I talked about this in the last episode. Pretty lackluster effort, I thought, and it kind of spilled into Tuesday's Champions League match. But Lucho coming after Ousmane Dembele. Yeah, Ousmane Dembele, Ballon d'Or winner. And kind of needed, basically telling these guys that nobody is bigger than the squad. That's not what we're building here. That's what we had here, and you know what that resulted in. Being the ridicule of the world. He said, we ain't having that. So props to Lucho. I mean, yeah, my bias notwithstanding. Over in Spain, Los Blancos, Real Madrid once again, lead Barca, because Barca stumbled in the loss at Girona. Yeah. Getting banged up and nicked up and not in great form, not the most opportune time for those folks at Barcelona. CR7, that CR7, Mr. Ronaldo, ends his protest and right on cue scores 18 minutes after entering the pitch. Go figure. Yeah. And you say MLS is a dog and pony league. Okay, CR7, whatever you say. Yeah, one of his contemporaries, well, should have been as far as the greats of that era, but as we speak all the time, our man Ney, that's right, Neymar Jr. Well, he is basically come out and said what many of us have been thinking for a while. He's considering retirement. And while that would be sad to see him walk away from the game at this point, because I do think he could get a few more years. But as I've said many times when it comes to the talented but often injured superstar, he can't stay healthy. At this point, he's got so many millions and cutie pies. Just go live your best life. Go get a belly like Carlos Vela. Anybody gives you shit, tell them the FO. Yeah, you got no reason to hang around, and I don't think you're ever going to get yourself in top form again, where you're a threat. It's in must-see TV. He knows it, we know it, so get on with the inevitable, I say. Okay. So now that we're getting it, closer to March, deep in the football proper season, at least starting here tomorrow, but, the rest of the world's kind of deep into it. Wow. The rumors are already going. And I don't believe this, but Fabrizio said it, so I have to take it somewhat seriously. He says PSG has asked Man City if a possibility could Mr. Haaland, yeah, that Erwin Haaland, if he's available, could we purchase him? I don't believe it, but like I said, it came from Fabrizio, so he usually doesn't sell wolf tickets. Not like the rest of the weirdo columnists of the soccer world. So we'll see what happens there. Boy, I don't know. I love asking this question. And it came up last week, in the FA Cup. And it always bears asking, though. Is soccer better with or without VAR? And you can have a lot of takes on this particular question. Here's mine. I'm going to say it's better. Just fix the damn thing. I know when we didn't have it, and the way I saw my team get screwed, I don't mind it. But the fact that it is broken as all get up, and it varies from how it's implemented and executed throughout the globe, just fix the damn thing. With all replay, we've got the technology. It can't be that damn hard, right? If you can fix it, but I would say it's better. But however, in this fucking broken down ass version of it, all the folks who basically frown and wish it would go away, as the man said, I understand. I get it. All right, folks. We're rocking and rolling. When we come back, we'll do a little dash of some Nightfall of Diamonds. See you there in a second. Okay, welcome back to the Foxhole. Just seeing the lovely Katie George talking to Ant-Man as the T-Wolves handle their business and dispatch the Mavs by 11. Now it's time for the Lakers and the Clippers. All right, it's time for... We're going to do our little Dark Star crashing. Nightfall of Diamonds, and we start off this segment before talking baseball. We get our little hippie vibe in because that's how we roll. Because it is our podcast or my podcast, and I'm going to talk up some hippie whenever I can. We'll start off with this, not necessarily on the hippie bus, but it's San Francisco, so there's some correlation there. How about all this talk this week about Steve Perry? No, not Steve Perry of the cherry popping Denny's. No, Steve Perry from Journey, because this Journey's gonna do one more lap. Neil Sean's keeping the thing going with all the fights he's been having with Jonathan Cain and Ross Valerie and blah blah blah. Anyways, there was all this talk that Steve Perry was going to be a part of this reunion tour, and everybody was like, "Oh, don't stop believing," getting all cheery, and then Steve Perry had to be the curmudgeon and basically just say, it ain't that kind of party. I ain't participating in this. So, all you folks that were looking to get nostalgic, that ain't happening. Okay. So, Fish, that Fish, the Fish from Vermont, announced its summer tour, and all those rumor folks, they happen to be correct. I'll skip up the table, so the mic just took a little tumble there, but we've got it under control. So Fish announcing, a 21-date tour, going back to Dick's after going to Folsom last year. 4 nights in July at MSG, the Mecca. And I'm sitting here thinking, there ain't no place you all can be playing outside in July. Like Jones Beach or something like that. Saratoga. You're going to play indoors in July. But nevertheless, Fish in July in New York. What are these going to be shows? 95 through 98 or something like that. Times they played at the Garden. That's going to be cool. Looking forward to that. They also dropped New Year's 93 today. Official archival release. Definitely have it, but I haven't had time to unpack it. It was one of my favorite shows when I was first getting into the PH. So that'll be a nice listen with the cans a little bit later after when I'm probably putting this podcast together. Okay. Park the bus can. Dark Star always crashes. Mirror fades and all that wonderful stuff. Or mirror shatters. Okay. Let's start off and talk some baseball here. This Tony Clark thing, oh man, he's getting an award. To have this kind of tawdry stuff come out when we are on the precipice of one of the biggest labor battles the sport's probably ever seen, as I said on Aftershocks, we could be looking at 1994 all over again with bigger consequences. And this guy, head of the players union, he's getting his freak on with his sister-in-law. Can't wait to see how Christmas dinner turns out there. Whew, man. Yeah. Okay. Everything going on with MLB, Oliver Stone people, start taking notes. The conspiracies are on. But MLB and its broadcast partners are going to adapt to the ABS era, the automatic all balls and strikes. Basically taking away the infographic where you can see where the pitches are because they don't want people figuring out ways to cheat and be able to challenge more frequently. Stay tuned for that. Always trying to get that extra little edge. That's why we love baseball so much. Wow. And then you've got Steve Cohen. Mr. Cohen, that guy. He says as long as he owns the Mets, he'll never be a captain. Deal or no deal? Not really a big deal at this point. Sure, it's cool when you have an iconic guy like Derek Jeter and you get to call him the captain. But in this day and age where everybody's about themselves and their brand, yeah, I don't think having the C on your jersey carries the luster that it once did. If some teams want to go that way, no problem there. But it's not really a big deal if while he owns the team, and he owns a lot, that there will be no captain for the New York Metropolitans. Okay, let's see here. What else we got? Okay, I've been watching the ballpark cam in Las Vegas. This is always a story I just clearly won't let go. Excuse me. Remember I had the doomsday clock, for the team leaving Oakland and the Sacramento, and the doomsday clock hit midnight. Well, for it has hit midnight. Because, you're seeing this edifice slowly rise up, on the former site of the Tropicana. I'm looking forward to it. Of course, the comments from the baseball peanut gallery, that's almost as entertaining as watching this new clamshell ballpark be built. Because all the folks that thought it would never happen, now they're whining about, oh, good grief, having to fly to Vegas. The A's fans, people in Vegas, I talked about their complaints all the time about the traffic it's going to bring. And yeah, this is just going to be another way this town has become hollow and sold its soul, to the big sports corporations. And, somebody said the other day to me, we've been talking about UNLV basketball, and we were saying about how it's never going to get back to the heights of Tarkanian because, as Colin Cowart said it best, and he'd know because he was there the same time I was working, on a local TV station. And Vegas became a real city. It's got real teams. So all that stuff of the past, it ain't coming back. But a lot of salty takes. Another good sign for this upcoming season. We had baseball today, too. I haven't had a chance to look at any of the highlights, but exhibition season kicked off today, so we're really happy to see the boys and the unis and all the pomp and circumstance that goes along with that. But how about Garrett Cole? Back from Tommy John surgery and hitting 99 on the speed guns, or 98.9, so 99. So the one heat, I always say, you're even better when you come back from this once you've had the procedure. So looking forward, I'm sure the folks in the Bronx are looking even more forward to having that guy as a weapon. Yeah. Still keeping an eye on this thing with Bryce Harper and Dave Dombrowski. As Dombrowski said that Harper is no longer an elite player. Very unnecessary thing to say about a guy who's been pretty talented throughout his career and probably has plenty left in the tank. My question is, but I'm pretty sure that marriage is going to come to an end sooner than later. Who steps up to add him? Obviously, if the Dodgers did it, I think we truly would have a repeat of the 30 Years' War. But you got to figure one of these teams is trying to knock the Dodgers out if he's going to get moved. That's going to be a very compelling story as the year moves on. Another compelling story is Mike Trout moving back to center field. I think that's a great sign that he's healthy, and that's good for MLB and even better for the LA Angels, as they really need to be just relevant. And, forget about winning the ring, just be relevant to some degree. I think we'd be more than okay with that. Oh, yeah. Then you got Padres making some moves. Mr. Castellanos, drinking the beer in the locker room. He got Phillies cut bait. They get him, and they only have to pay him like $25 million or something like that. So that's probably a good deal for the Padres. They also signed former Dodger Walker Buehler. So Padres just saying, you know what? We're going to keep trying until we take the Dodgers down. Got to give them that. All right, folks. We're clicking. When we return, we will do a closer look on the other side. All right, folks, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Sitting here cold chilling, watching the Lakers and the Clippers battling early. Tight game, but we're not in meaningful time yet, so plenty of time for the Lakers to have a piss-poor third quarter and drive their fans and the diehard Laker family Facebook group crazy. Wow. Let's do a closer look, right? Time to opinionate, editorialize, talk a little trash. That thing we do towards the end of every Foxtrotting and a Foxhole episode. We're talking tanking all week in the NBA. And I thought, is this tanking issue just another pathway to a darker conversation? There's a lot of optics going on in this particular week. Right? Mark Cuban, I talked about this the other day on Aftershocks. Really making that distinction from Connie Mack. Basically just have a competitive team and make the dollar whether or not you win the championship, and just everything that goes along with that. Thinking about Mark Cuban, right? And not Mark Cuban, but Roger Goodell and Jay-Z, trying to build a bigger audience, perhaps at the expense of the product. You see what I'm getting at? Obviously embracing Taylor Swift, and probably will do so more. It'll be interesting how that plays out once Travis truly steps away from the game. But it's why I say it's a darker pathway, a pathway to a darker conversation. Is this notion that hardcore fans that made all these sports great, that they matter. And it's time to have real talk about that. You do and you don't. As I've been saying all along, as much as we bitch and moan, they've got our money. They've got our attention. Even when we think the product is slock, if there's a game of relevance, our asses are probably checking it out. Am I lying? No, I'm not. And that's not a bad thing. I just think that when I see the peanut galleries and I'm just here for the comments and I just hear all this stuff, well, why is it this? Why they don't need to do this? Of course they don't. But it isn't about what you and I were attracted to. It isn't the same thing. It always has been about business, and maybe we were too naive to know it. But one thing is clear. Whether you're naive or not, it's hard to miss. We went from Up With People to doing shit like Bad Bunny and Kendrick Lamar. I'm not saying that in a negative way, just calling it for what it is. And it's clear that the entertainment aspect of it, it's bigger than the fandom. Don't get me wrong. They want your supporter groups. They want your traveling parties and all these things and the whole experience they're trying to build out. It's pretty clear that it being a province, I should say, for the common man, that ain't happening anymore. The common man can go, but the common man's going to have to give up a lot of his resources to be a part of it. We've talked that angle to death. Right? It is what it is. It's, once again, all about entertainment. The whole thing with the Bears, watching some of the arguments there, with this whole move to, the city begins with an H. For some reason, I can't think of the name of it. Hammond, Indiana. It's part of the Chicagoland Metro. I mean, it's basically like kind of Kansas City, Kansas. All that stuff you have in New Jersey, over there in the Meadowlands where the Gigantes play. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. People complaining, I'm like, it's just going to be another faceless, it's a weak town. I go, yeah, but if you build a city around the stadium is what all these people are doing, especially if we have the footprint. I know that's not what you got into it for, Boomer, Gen X, but this is where we are now. I mean, sports grew up, and it is truly an experience. Part of the entertainment angle. I don't know, man. I just think, we just have to be real about this and kind of realize, and a lot of folks in their belly aching, I don't know what to tell you. Either stop watching or go grab an adult beverage and just accept what's going on. You don't have to like it, but bitching about it's only going to give you more of an ulcer and lessen your appreciation for whatever it is that still attracts you to the game. All right, let me flip over here. Let me go back to the Olympics. Let me just call this America the Weird. There's a lot of weird optics this week. Let's talk about our girl, everyone's girl, Michaela, who was on her way to having another disaster and got her redemption, got a gold. If you follow my podcast and stuff, I've been giving that lady her flowers throughout the 6 years I've been on this podcast. I like to say, man, that's how we say our girl Michaela. So I was really happy that she got the gold. And it was really funny though, how everybody sort of, made that one of their moments of the Olympics and just really, getting on this patriotic trip. Even, right, woke and MAGA, going, man, I'm so proud of her. And I thought, God grief, America the Weird. Right in that same week that all these people are just oogling on Michael Jordan at Daytona. We know what an icon Jordan is and how, he redefined branding in sports, with the Jumpman and Nike and all that shit. And I just said, man, this is such a weird country when, I'm not even going to get into that. What is she, a speed skater? She's from China and basically took a big check from China. Right, she's American, grew up and went to school. It wasn't either Cal or Stanford. But you see her on the podium. Boy, I'm not going there, but you can imagine the word I'm thinking of. If you've seen this woman, how obnoxious she is, I would give her a 5 strip as far as TMCA time. I don't even want to. I don't even want to give her that luxury. That's how revolted I was by that. But yeah, once again, such a weird country where you could have somebody who's like, oh no, I'll just go over to China and take a check. Interesting times we live in. And yeah, I just was laughing. Same thing with the ladies hockey team. Great. Love how everybody starts getting on this wagon. It's kind of cool, right? Because for at least for 2 seconds, somebody's not screaming and yelling like, well, what show were you watching? It's more like, yeah, I'm proud of her. I'm glad you love your country. There are some folks who hate America so much. They're just like, I wish I could be happy for this moment, but this country sucks too much for me right now to enjoy this. Yeah, well, you're probably fun at parties too, that kind of person. No, I get all that, right? But like I said, it's just interesting for me as this Olympics has gone on. And we've gotten some moments because if Michaela had come up short, well, I don't know if people would have pounced all over her, but it would have been a sad story. And it's cool. It was like the first time she's medaled, since 2014. She's had a lot of disappointment. We know about our girl Lindsey Vonn, what a messed up story that is, especially finding out that her dog died, while this is all going on. Yeah. Definitely Michaela delivering was cool, but it's just so funny, just kind of watching, the whole narrative and everybody, getting washed in red, white, and blue and all this stuff. And same with the ladies hockey, for the most part, not seeing the typical jibber jabber that is so common these days. Like I said, when we're just here for the comments, maybe we need more moments like that. All right, folks, I'm rambling, so let me hop off the express, recharge, and we'll come back with the NFL report and some TMCA time to get you out of here on this fabulous Friday. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Trying to close things out here on a fabulous Friday. The Lakers leading by 6 with 2 and some change left in the first stanza. Luka, I think, getting ready to go to the line. Telling you, this is a big game for both of these squads, especially the Clippers at 27-28, 9th in the West. Lakers 33 and 21. What are they? Is that 5th in the West? Anyway. All right. We are now week 2 without the No Fun League. Plenty of stuff going on in the boardrooms, on the net. Let's get at it. I think we spoke about this last week, about people being kind of hot under the collar, about the 49ers and Rams playing in Melbourne to start the season, and possibly the 49ers also having to go to Mexico. But it was piggybacks on what I was saying in the last segment, by it being entertainment. Right? You might as well stop complaining, because Commissioner Goodell, as long as on his watch, it's all going to be about trying to build a bigger audience and getting as much reach as possible. And if it puts your team at an inconvenience, oh well, go have an adult beverage. Maybe go out to the firing range to get your frustrations out, because you're going to be mad unless you release that somehow, because nothing's going to change. This is what I'm getting at in my ramble. Okay. We've got Patty Mahomes restructuring his deal. He's going to get paid again down the road. But right now, the Chiefs get some much needed cap relief, which will allow them to retool, reorient themselves to make another run for jewelry. Makes sense. The other big story that went down, I think I may have mentioned this other day, about Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins moving on from him and Bradley Chubb. No surprises there. Time to start anew. The question is, what are you going to do about Tua still hanging in the air? Let's hear. Right, the Seahawks not tagging Kenneth Walker. They may let him walk. Maybe a casualty. As far as this is what happens when you win the Super Bowl and you're clever in doing it. The sacrifices you have to make the numbers work. Something tells me they're going to find a way to make a deal to keep him on the roster. I'd be highly surprised about that. The other big news coming out of the Emerald City is that it is official. They are on the block, as provided by Paul Allen's will. The question is, who is going to step up? A lot of people are saying it's going to be Bezos, but there are some other billionaires, the Billionaire Boys Club, who are saying, oh, hell yeah. In fact, because when it comes to Bezos, a lot of the folks in D.C. now think that's the missing piece as to why Josh Harris ended up with the Commanders. And Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, was a logical choice to step in there. But instead, people are saying, well, no, he was just waiting for the opportunity, knowing what Paul Allen's, the provisions of what his will, prescribed as far as, the dispossession of the Trailblazers and the Seahawks. Makes kind of sense. We'll definitely keep an eye on how that plays out. They're already talking, hey, whoever, that they're already scheming, if it's a billionaire, to get a new crib built in Seattle. And it's like, oh, good grief. Lumen's already outdated. Stay tuned there, huh? Kind of interesting to, a lot of the coordinators moving on. I see the Rams kept the young brother, elevated him. There's a lot of, Chris Sims coming out and calling out some of these teams, that are going with first-time coordinators, calling, saying don't hire anybody in the building. All I can say about that is people had to get their start somewhere, right? If somebody gave young John Madden an opportunity to be first a coordinator and a coach at 33, same with John Gruden, he had been part of Andy Reid's tree and also, I think he may have worked with, Mike Holmgren. Boy, I just like the hypocrisy here. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go get someone like a Jim Schwartz, right, or a Rex Ryan, why are you recycling somebody? If you go with an unknown, this is a foolish move. Why are you doing this now with somebody that's unproven? What I wish a lot of these talking heads would do, and a lot of these internet experts, let it play out, then call them out for it, because you don't fucking know how these things are going to play out. Stop being so negative. Stop trying to get clickbait and click rage with all these stupid ass motherfucking takes. Pardon my language. Oh, speaking of melting down, you see Ocho Cinco? We talked about him earlier, but him and Shay Shay and the whole thing with, speaking of another new coordinator, what's his name? Declan Doyle is talking about Lamar and basically, hey, I want everybody at OTAs and all the off-season workouts. And Ocho Cinco doing race baiting at its finest, and I don't get this when it comes to what you can't say anything about an African-American quarterback's work habits. You can't say, hey, I want more for him without, how dare you say that? I mean, yeah, I saw a piece of Emmitt Smith doubling down again, right? When he said to, I think it was Diana Rossini beforehand, and about Shador, and I'm just sitting here, I'm like, did you see his stat line? Did you watch the games? I know you fucking have licked, no, don't be naughty like that. I know you probably have dreamed about Dion for years in certain ways. But stop with your simping for Dion, man. I thought it was one of the more shameless things I've seen on TV all week. I don't give a shit, man. Right. I may have a long-standing hatred for the Cowboys, but I've always had respect for Emmett. But it's just every time he opens his mouth, especially on Shadur, my respect for him plummets. Just saying. Man. But yeah, the way he melted down, even Shay, who could be as woke as they come as far as the WSM is concerned. He was like, hey, if Belichick can call out Tom Brady, 7-time winner Tom Brady, how is Lamar, who's got as many playoff wins as C.J. Stroud, somehow above reproach? And his coach can't say, gee, you should maybe attend all the offseason workouts and really put some dedication in the film study and trying to add wrinkles. So people can't say, yo, we got the book on that, brother. Whew, man. How about Minnesota? Does Minnesota try to correct its mistake on the fly, or do they exercise patience with J.J. McCarthy? There's talk that maybe they make a move for Kyler or Malik Willis, kind of like they did with Darnold. Maybe on a short deal. Just say, well, maybe we made a mistake with this guy. But I don't know. Like with Michael Penix Jr. down in Atlanta, I just don't think there's enough reps. I think you got to give these guys a little bit more of some runway. Now, I get it. You get some time into next year. Right. Week 6 and 7. And it's still kind of like, I don't think so. Because at some point, you got to know when you got the dude or, you're about to mix a lemonade with all those lemons that are all of a sudden in your pantry. Okay. And I'm also fascinated with this ongoing campaign to downgrade Mr. Mendoza. It's, yeah. I mean, who knows, right? This guy might be a Sam Darnold type, or he could become the next Tim Tebow. Is more known for being inspirational and not a lot of actually being good on the football field, but this guy's got, more skills. And I love what he says. He talks about his Cal experience because everybody seems to forget. I forget because I remember watching him at Cal and thinking, yeah, there's something about this guy. So I could see the apprehensions because, this time of year, it's really easy to go through the tape and really pick apart somebody's game. All right, but do I think he's a number one overall? Probably not. But in kind of light draft at that position, if you're the Raiders, you probably trade him and Max Crosby for a boatload of picks and try to do what Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones were able to achieve. That would be me. But, asking Mark Davis to do the right thing, that would be like, my favorite crush that works down at the market actually finally wanted to go out with me. It's like, it's a great thought, but it's probably not going to happen. Ooh, did he say that? Oh, man, stop it. Yeah, so let's see here. I just mentioned Max Crosby. I think the Raiders should move him and the pick for Mendoza. I think it's a no-brainer. Moving on, the Eagles get a big shot in the arm. Lane Johnson, their offensive lineman, stalwart. He says he's coming back next year. Thought it was cool. I think I was watching NFL Live, and they were talking to Saquon Barkley, Saquon, Mr. Barkley. He didn't know. He assumed he was coming back, but he didn't actually know. And you just could see that twinkle in his eyes, like saying, "Hell yeah, about to eat now." So For me, I as a Commanders fan, I'm just like, F all of them. But it's always good for the league. And LeBron taking a punch in the solar plexus and going down like a bee. Ooh. I don't know if I mentioned this the other day. I don't think so. About Travis Hunter, the Jags basically saying that they're going to make him a full-time corner and part-time wide receiver. And I know there was a lot of talk this week on the various platforms about that. Yeah, I think they're making the right move. I don't know. I think he could be a pretty good receiver in an occasional situation. I don't think he's got the burl to survive on the other side of the ball. I know everybody thinks that's the strongest position, but I think he just becomes, right on that talented group of wide receivers that Goldilocks, my man T Law, has. He just becomes another component in that, and you use him in certain packages for your defense. But I don't think, no way is he a two-way guy. You can just tell by his physical makeup. And I also think that as a DB, yeah, he's probably could be a good corner guy, but I don't think he could withstand the rigors of playing 17 games at that position. What do I know, though? That's just my take on it. A lot of questions going on in D.C. Found out that Marshawn Lattimore will not be back. And the Salty Brigade that follow the Commanders and the DMV, they're all having an adult beverage or 4 hearing that news. It's kind of, interesting that people are still suggesting that Adam Peters kicks the tires on Brandon Ayuk. A lot of fans feel that way. I gotta say, nah, man, there's a lot of good wideouts out there. I mean, okay, he's had a relationship with them, and you do the due diligence, and this guy can't be a clown. This guy won't be a clown. Maybe. But see, what I feel, and this is just me being a Commanders fan, after last year's fall from grace, after being in the NFC Championship game, you can't afford to make a miss like that at this point. You got to get back onto building a strong foundation. And if you miss there and give that guy, more money that we can spend for somebody else, and I say we because I've been a fan since '69, so yeah, I'm going to say we. Yeah, I don't know about kicking the tires on Mr. Ayuk. I would say no. What else do I got? I'm going to give props to Buccaneers Levante David for keeping it real. He just said, basically, we control our own destiny. We control our own destiny and kind of shit the bed. I was like, kind of shit the bed. Weren't you like 6-1, ended up 8-9? That's not kind of shit in the bed. That's like diarrhea that got onto the carpet and seeped into the hallway, if you ask me. But I give him props for coming out, basically saying what we all knew and thought. Alrighty, folks. The trucks from the foundry pulled up a while ago, since we're kind of doing this a little bit later in the evening than we usually do. But the trucks pulled up and it dropped off, those stainless steel bowls that contain the smelliest varieties. And I'm talking smelly varieties this week. They come in complimentary regular to XL sizes for those throughout the week, earn that distinction by their deeds and transgressions, or as we like to say, them being who they be. It's TMCA time coming at you in the Foxhole. Well, I gotta start off with Tony Clark. That's right, that Tony Clark, former MLB PA head, being that dude. Man, not only your sister-in-law, but some other freak got them jobs. You have this great role, and you piss it away because you can't control your inner toy. Yeah, I don't have a lot of mercy for these fools that are in these great jobs. They can be difference makers, and because a little nookie makes them, forget about their responsibility to the task at hand and the damage you're going to do to your family and the people that supposedly love you. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to give him 3XLs. Easily. Fuck that. Pardon my language. I'm going to give him 4XLs. Your sister-in-law? Come on, bro. I'm going to give him an XL. No, 2XLs to Kirby Smart. One for Kirby Smart and one for Risk Players. Man, I know your hands are tied because you're probably afraid if you reprimand these fucking entitled brats, I'm gonna grab my shit and boogie to somewhere else and get a bigger bag. Like Flo J. Johnson's mom says, Flo J ain't losing at life. Wow. Yeah, there are more arrests this week. It's just, I don't know. You gotta do something. He says we try, but once again, when they're afraid of the players and what they might do. Okay. I'm going to give a regular to Mr. Ayton getting detained for cannabis at customs in Bahamas, going through the Bahamas after the All-Star game. Okay. What are you doing traveling? I know it's the liberated age, but is your dumbassery on the level of that? Where having cannabis in your possession going to customs, where that could even be a possibility? Obviously, you failed your entrance exam at Caltech. I mean, come on, man. I'm going to give an XL to Cam Newton. This is, it should be more, but I'm just going to give him an XL because he's got quite a collection over time. But this is just a combined, having your show canceled after 6 episodes, and 2, some of the misogynistic comments you've been making, right? And you wonder why you don't get the opportunities that Tom Brady gets. Well, you ain't Tom Brady for one. Nobody will ever think of you in that regard. And then, as General Andre says, when you do stupid shit and there's nobody there to stop you from doing stupid shit, this is what happens. Okay. I gotta give an XL out to Flo J. Johnson's mom. Even though I like the rant. Come on, man. You can't be going ghetto fabulous on a platform like that. Right? And if I knew what your daughter's reaction was, and if your daughter's down with that, she gets one too. Come on, man. You don't have to be a hood rat always. I'm giving it XL right now. Should be 2, but we're gonna hold it at that. You know how Kristen Furia made a lot of noise last week coming at Dion, but the fact that he called out Joe Gibbs, which there's no reason to put Joe Gibbs in your mouth about anything. I don't care what kind of shitty fucking time you may have had in Gibbs 2.0, but as a Korean coach selling other shit on TV, you're calling out Joe Gibbs, one of the greatest coaches ever? The man that won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks? Even made the playoffs, in his second term, dealing with the Sean Taylor horrible tragedy. Just the idea, and I'm going to give complimentaries out to, all the folks in Commanders Nation. You all cry about everything, and somehow that went over your heads when somebody talks about the beloved Joseph Jackson Gibbs, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Wow. NBA, Commissioner Silver You get an XL for that slam dunk contest. Yeah. I mean, it's so bad, I can't even find the words to even come up with something to say about it. Okay, I'm going to give 2 XLs. I don't know if you saw this on the internet. The thug from Dorsey High School that unloaded on this referee. Yeah, I mean, was throwing some haymakers. I mean, this is the kind of entitled fucking bullshit that we're allowing and nurturing. Oh, let's let them come back in high school, like I said the other day, so they can do stupid shit like this. Okay. An XL for the Hall of Shame and complimentaries all around for the dumb shits at Redwood High School in Visalia, California, making the rounds. Picture of them spilling out the F word. Not the one that ends with K, but the one that ends with T. And it went viral. Kiddies, learn early. Don't do stuff like that. And if you are, you gotta make sure everybody's phone's in a basket so there's no way shit like this can go viral. Come on now. Alright, last one. Complimentaries once again, and another one for the Hall of Shame. 2 for the Hall of Shame for this one, really. You know, all the wonderful work that they did restoring the 6th Street Bridge, you know, the cool arches. It's supposed to be lit up, but it never is. Why? Because asshats keep stealing the copper wire. You know, I don't know why when they went through the project of redoing the bridge and making it cool, that someone didn't think about solar then, or didn't think either we need security, because these motherfuckers don't stop at anything when it comes to snatching the copper wire. And you know that the folks accepting it, they probably know where it's from. It's like, hey, okay, we're going to go sell this to China or wherever. I know, it's crazy. All right, folks, we have reached the finish line of episode 302. Keep an eye out for episode 32 of Aftershocks, the season finale of season 1. My buddy SG and I, we're going to try to get together this weekend to make some new content. So keep an eye out for that. The scene, you never know when that's going to pop up. I want to get it going, but you know, it's hard getting people to commit to things, but whatever. In the meantime, I'm going to go watch the rest of this Lakers-Clippers game. Enjoy an adult beverage over the weekend. Enjoy the return of MLS. I know I will. And all the NBA and college action that you can get your eyeballs on. Stay safe. Definitely stay. I know I have a problem with the S's. Definitely stay sane. Enjoy those adult beverages and the good food and the good fellowship. And you know what we always say, avoid the bracelets. All right, folks, as always, I'll see you as far as Foxtrotting in the Foxhole goes, 6 to 8 days, and probably sooner on the Aftershocks platform. Like and subscribe to FTIN FX Media's YouTube channel. Give a brother a like. Put a smile on my face. Okay, folks, we outie 5,000.